You're listening to the Building Stronger Agents podcast, where we interview the top solo agents, team leaders, and brokers across the country to see what makes them thrive in today's market and beyond. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of the Building Stronger Agents podcast. I'm Will Penny and my co-host is Mark Young. And today we've got a young couple who've been in the business for a few years, and we're going to talk to them about their business. They've had a great start to their career, and we'd like to see how they're handling this current shift. And I'd like to welcome Mike and Diana Magno to our show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Thank you, Will. Thanks, Mark.
Excellent.
Thanks for being here. Good morning, Diana.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I'm glad you guys are here.
Super thrilled to have you guys on the show here. Would you guys mind just taking a couple minutes and sharing your story on how you guys ended up getting into real estate?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first since I got in first. We met in the hospitality business. We were both in the restaurant business together, and that's how we met. And it was never supposed to be a long-term career for me. I got into it in the recession of 08, 09. And, through 2016, it just wasn't really what I wanted to get into. And luckily enough, I say luckily now, right? The company that I worked for brought me into the office one day in February of 2016 and wanted to go a different direction. And, it was all the better. I mean, honestly, at the time it was obviously, wow, it's all I know. It's, what am I going to do? And so I ended up getting licensed that summer, going into the fall of 2016 and didn't really know what we were going to do. And I closed my very first deals in December of 2016, and it kind of just, moved from there. As I grew the business in 2019, I, mentioned to Diana about maybe getting her license. I was at a point where I needed help, but I didn't want to bring on an admin. I didn't want that expense of salary. And I didn't really know much about team building at that point. I only got into the business just to simply replace the income I was making at the restaurant, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year I was making between salary and bonuses and stuff. And that was all I really wanted to do. But by year 3, I'd far exceeded what I was making previously. And I was like, wow, maybe we can actually really make this into something. So, Diana got licensed in 2019, but didn't really start working with me until, later in 2019 and then early into 2020. So then I'll let you take it from there, Diana.
Yeah. So 2019, I got licensed and my plan was to start part-time, but then my job brought me an offer that I really couldn't turn down going into the holidays. So I really didn't hit the ground running until January, once the Christmas season slowed down. And then obviously COVID happened. So I kind of just looked at Mike at that point. I was like, this is all I've known. Like, what am I going to do now? And it really was eye-opening, because then I would be waking up every day, just pounding the phones and calling my sphere. And then it just, we took a class earlier that year in September with Jason Abrams. And he says, if you don't like making telephone calls, you pull up your Facebook friends list and you start at A. I started at A and I got to E, and I've never finished my list.
So what happened when you say you didn't finish the list? You didn't need to finish the list?
I just got busy, like with people calling me and texting me, needing help selling houses, buying houses. I think I had 2 or 3 listings right off bat in March.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So basically you just started on your Facebook list.
Yep.
Friends.
Yep. And then, I tell this to everybody I have talked to who has asked me about how they've built their sphere and their client list. Out of all the homes that I've sold, there's only been 3 people I have not personally known. So, but obviously it's changed a little bit because now Mike and I have taken a different direction. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
What was that, Will? I had a question. Did you, just for people getting in the business now, did you just send like messenger messages, or did you just see them on there?
Yeah. So
what did you do?
they say, Facebook has their algorithms. If you start messaging people, then their posts start showing up on your feed. All these people that I've been messaging, I had no idea that, they were pregnant or getting married or changing jobs, because it only shows up on the people I click on or the people that I interact with.
Yeah, exactly.
Once I started opening these conversations up, their feeds started popping up on my feed, and then their people that they knew were popping up as people I may know.
So out of the gate, really cool. you just basically focused 100% on your sphere,
mm-hmm.
and not even the sphere, or it was a sphere that you didn't even know that you had.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, my first wasn't my first listing. My third or fourth listing, it was someone that Mike and I had worked with, or not even worked with, someone we knew from a bar we went to after we went to work. She let us list her house, and then she also let us list her mom's house. And it was right literally at the start of the pandemic.
Wow.
How long, and you may have mentioned this, how long were you licensed until you decided to step away from the restaurant business?
So I got my license in July of 2019. And then I didn't actually, I think I had 2 listings that first year while I was still working at the restaurant. And then February or March is when I really decided, okay, we're going to go all in. And I think I went back for a month or two.
Not even. I mean,
once they reopened the restaurants, and I'm like,
yeah,
what am I doing?
The governor shut it. When the governor shut everything down, she had nothing to do. So she's like, what do I do? And I said, well, go for it. Right. And
I actually started baking a lot. And
yeah, that too.
Well, I had a little baking business out of my house. Like I wasn't doing anything. So I was baking 1,000 cupcakes at a time and just going on Facebook and said, I have, a 6-pack of this and a 6-pack of this. Who's interested?
That's cool. Well, and I'm assuming that it was another way for you to be able to stay in the loop or in front of people, especially during a weird time where nobody was really sure how to navigate the communication and who to meet where and what was going to be open. You sort of touched on this, but obviously you guys sort of hit the ground running, both in your own way. What would you say are either one key thing or a few things that you could attribute to the success that you've had? Obviously, being in the business as long as you guys have now, a couple of years, you've seen maybe some agents that have come and gone, or that you've seen that are still in the business that might not have the success that you have. We all have our own little story, but what would you guys attribute your sort of early onset success to?
Gosh, I mean, for me, it was just, it was answering my phone and then also taking anything I could get my hands on, any referrals from agents in my office at the time that didn't want to deal with it, or taking lower priced, buyers, or just really whatever I could scrape together. My very first deal, this is what really honestly probably kept, made me make the decision to even continue, right, and not go get a job, was I had phone time, right? Like who does phone time anymore, right? Well, I signed up for it. I didn't know what would if anything would ever come up for it, but they offered it at my office, so I signed up for it. And lo and behold, I get a call one day, and this guy's like, "Yeah, I want to sell my house." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, great," and I get all this information from him, and then I put together a listing presentation. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done it before. I go down to his house. They show me their home. I come back the next day and actually do a physical listing presentation. And they told me hey, we're interviewing 4 agents. So, we're not going to make a decision today or, at the table today, but we'll let you know either way. And I said, okay, great. And I just really appreciated the opportunity. Lo and behold, they were kind of shooing me out of their house because they were expecting another agent to show up right after me. Well, I hadn't even got back to the office yet. It was 20 minutes later, they called. They're like, "Hey, we want to hire you." literally first listing presentation I ever went on. I had no idea what I was doing. And here I come to find out the agent that was supposed to be behind me was like 30 minutes late showing up. And they called me before she even showed up to their house. So then the next day I came back and they signed the listing, and I sold their house. And then at the time I didn't know any better, but the buyer called me directly. They found the listing on realtor.com. They didn't want an agent, because I actually tried to refer it because I didn't know what I was doing, especially to do both sides of a deal. And they're like, no, we're fine. We don't need an agent. You keep your commission, blah, blah, blah. They were a super nice family. So they buy that house. And then obviously the family that sold the house also needed to buy a house. So, just dumb luck a little bit, I guess, right? Like it takes a little bit of that. And I got those 3 commission checks basically that first December. It was right before Christmas. It was like 10 grand after splits. And I was like, hey, I've arrived. So
that's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then in so then fast forward 2017, it was slow. I mean, I still did 14 or 15 transactions then, in 2017. And it was just the same stuff. It was just scraping whatever I could to get together. My dad and I bought a little condo in Timber Top to flip. That was a deal that we did. So, we bought it and I got a little bit. And when we sold it, I got a little bit. And, so we did that. And, just whoever would let me, and in my office too, I'd partnered up with a couple of, higher producing agents in their office doing open houses at their listings. And, they just kind of took a shine to me, and, they'd throw me a bone every once and again on a referral, and, just kind of snowballed from there. So, so for me, I mean, what I would say, Mark, is you're only going to get out of this what you put in it. And if you're not willing to put in the work, and that's where I think a lot of new agents, they fail. And we'll see how it goes for us too in this new market, because we've never been part of a down market. I have no idea. I've known this day was coming for a long time, and it actually helps segue into why I started down the path of strictly the investment business that we've kind of gone that path. So but yeah, it's been it's one of those situations where you just got to put in the you put in the work. I try to learn as much as I can through either doing stuff like this with podcasts, or meeting guys like you, or reading books, or going to events and things like that. So I just constantly trying to learn and grow.
I think what's really cool about your story, and it's super transparent, is that, and I don't think I've ever met an agent in the business, and I've been selling full time for 15 years now, that has success that doesn't have a story similar to yours. Like there's no magic wand or silver bullet, right, or special pill. Like if you go all the way back to the start of most, and I'll even say all agents that I know of that have a sustainable business, there's a story like that, which is showing up, answering your phone, doing all of the basics that you need to do. There's no like, oh, I showed up to the office, my phone started ringing, and I started making a bunch of money. It's all just hustle.
Right. Yeah. And just like I said, just taking those opportunities when they came, right? Like I just, I went and met those people, and they didn't ask, it's one of those situations too. Like they never asked me how many houses I'd ever sold, because at the time it was 0. So I used the statistics from I just used the statistics from my office. Like, hey, this is what my office does. This is what my office does. This is what my office does. And they didn't ask, and I didn't provide.
I love it.
So I look back on it. I mean, was it, I don't know how to, it's one of those situations, like how does any new agent get a start, right? Like you have to have someone take a chance on you.
You have to show up and keep your fingers crossed, basically.
Yeah. And that's what, and like I said, it's one of those situations where, I don't know if you want to call it luck. I mean, hey, I showed up and good things happened, right? It's not like I can't talk to people. It's not like I can't present information to people. And it's one of those situations where I feel like, I did that, and I won that listing, and, literally, I mean, the rest is history. I mean, we, to the point where we sold over 100 properties last year, so it's one of those things. Like I just look back on it and I'm like, yeah, I'm thankful. Who knows, had they not gotten me that listing agreement, we might not be having this conversation today. I might have not continued, I might have went and got a job, and maybe the growth was slower. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know.
You mentioned that you'll thank your previous employer if you ever run into them. The person you should thank the most is the agent that showed up 30 minutes late. You need to find out who she is.
Right.
Give her a call and say that she was she lit the fuse to your career.
Yeah, I still don't know. I have no idea. They didn't tell me, and I didn't ask. I really didn't want to know.
No, it'd be nice to know now though, just so you can send her a gift card.
Right. Yeah. Take her out. Hell, I'll take her out to dinner.
Do you guys have any systems that you use, or is it all just going rogue?
So no, so that's part of what we've started to figure out. So, part and parcel with Diana coming on full time with me in 2020, I was really struggling as maybe you guys were as well. We were all scraping the same barrel for the same listings, right? Because like when I broke into the business, everybody's like, hey, listings to live. Well, we were all fighting for the same scraps, right? Like no one was listing their homes. And I was already working with investors at that point. And I just literally had this epiphany one day at my desk. And I was like, what's the next best thing for me than a listing is a buyer that I don't actually have to show a house to. And that's how that whole thing, in my mind was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start pushing off the resource, the retail stuff, the regular Joe and Susie Smith buyer and seller onto Diana. And I'm going to concentrate on just getting myself well known in these investor circles with these out-of-state investors that want to buy. And that's what I've done. And that was it was all set in motion because of 2020 with COVID. Plus, in the back of my mind, I got in the business in 2016. Statistically, it's been a seller's market since 2013. Like, there had to be a reckoning coming, right? Like, so I've been thinking about this reckoning for a long time. And so then I thought, what's one way for me as an agent to weather those storms? Well, investors, right? Investors buy, doesn't matter the market. It doesn't matter the interest rates. And hell, if the market were to decline 20 or 30% like it did in 2009, my business would probably double because these guys are going to scoop up everything they can get their hands on at that point. So I made a shift, in 2020 to just concentrate on working with investors. And it's now to the point where I don't even, anybody who comes to me that is not an investor, they automatically go to, I hand them over to Diana and she takes it from there.
Like on the ground, Mike, what does that actually look like? When you say I made a shift to investors, what were the actions that you took to make that happen?
So I was a part of Bigger Pockets, the online community Bigger Pockets. I had joined Bigger Pockets in 2017. One of my clients who had bought, we had partnered and flipped a couple houses. He had flipped a couple other houses. He had bought some apartment buildings here in Ohio. He's like, hey, you should check this Bigger Pockets thing out. It's where I do a lot of, and he was in California at the time and he now lives in Denver. And so I got on there and I didn't really know what to make of it. So I kind of let it go. Well, in 2018, I became a premium agent on there, and they would feed you, a couple leads a month, whatever. And then I started just kind of organically going into the forums, making messages, direct messaging people, posting my deals and just showing people what I've done. And then one guy contacts you and that guy buys a property. Well, then that guy goes and tells another guy, hey, you should talk to Mike. He knows what the hell's going on in Cleveland. And that guy talked to this guy. And then they've revamped their systems at Bigger Pockets. I mean, it's my number one lead source at this point. So I'm part of their featured agent program now and in this market. And so that's my biggest lead source. And then that has led to just people just physically finding me on Facebook, finding me on Bigger Pockets, finding me on Instagram, finding me wherever. I mean, I get more cold emails now from people or cold calls to me. It's wild. Actually, we put a house under contract this morning. The gal cold emailed me like a week ago.
Wow, that's pretty quick.
Hey, this is my name. This is my story. She sent me a really nice, like 3-paragraph email about why she wanted to work with me and how she found me and who she talked to. And so I set up this. I always set up a Zoom for these people if they want, or a phone call. We set up a Zoom. Her and I talked for like an hour. It went actually, I let the conversation grow organically. I typically will cut them off at 30 minutes unless it's going like that. And lo and behold, a couple days later, I mean, one of my lender partners called me and said, hey, you know, so-and-so reached out to me. I got them pre-approved. I was like, wow, that was fast. I mean, literally, I just talked to her 2 days ago. And so she was, I mean, obviously very serious. So then fast forward the next day, I emailed her a property that fit in her bucket of what she wanted to buy. I toured the property personally. I had taken a video tour of it. I uploaded the link to YouTube. I sent her the YouTube link with the video. I pointed all the stuff out that I thought was pertinent. I sent her an investment analysis on the property as well. My investment analysis on the property. She called me yesterday. She's like, hey, let's put an offer in.
You got it done today.
Yeah, we negotiated that deal last night, and I sent over the fresh contract this morning to the agent. So
that's fantastic.
I mean, you know, just those things. I mean, it's right. It's time. What do they say? Time over task. I forget the whole equation, but you know, you just keep moving and keep doing, and that's what it's become for me.
Do you have any other routines that you guys have that you do on a regular basis that keeps you moving in the right direction, or is it pretty random?
I mean, for me, she'll tell you, I'm pretty guarded on my calendar nowadays. I used to not, and it was very difficult for me. I need that structure. So at this point, what I've done is my mornings consist of typically lead generation and lead follow-up. You know, I'll turn my phone and do not disturb. And like I'm going through my CRM, we use Follow Up Boss now, which is a really nice CRM.
And we use that as well. It's excellent.
Yeah, I love it. And I'll go through it and I'll just, you know, for a couple hours, I'm just pounding through, you know, either leads or stuff I need to follow up on, or, you know, just trying to dig up some new business that morning. And then I keep my afternoons open for me to meet, you know, to do appointments with people. I have a Calendly link that links to Zoom, and people can just schedule with me. Like I have it all automated now, which has been huge, because people would reach out to me and then I would email them, and then they'd say, well, I'm available this day and this day. And I'd be like, well, I'm not available either of those days. I'm available this day and this day. And it would take me 4 or 5, 6 emails back and forth before I'd be able to get something scheduled with people. So this whole Calendly thing, I'm like, oh, I've got to figure this out. So it's awesome. It's linked to my calendar. It links to Zoom. I send it out to people, pick a time slot. It's all automated, right? So that's been a huge thing for me as well. And then, you know, for me then, that's kind of my day, you know, and then the afternoons too, because we also have our own personal projects we've got going on too, whether it's, you know, we're rehabbing a duplex that we bought right now. We have a house that we flipped that I put up for sale this week. You know, so we've got those other things. So I might have to, you know, pencil in time to go meet with contractors or this or that or the other. So, you know, Diana keeps her calendar a little bit more fluid. That way she can pick up stuff for me that I can't get to. So
Diana, what's your normal routine?
You know, it's a lot like Mike's. I spend the morning doing my lead generation and checking my emails, and my afternoons are open for appointments. I don't take appointments or do closings before noon, because I mean, what difference is it going to make if I give you keys at 10 or give you keys at noon, you know? And then I spend my afternoon on the phone. Mike and I, we have a system. So he has the conversations with these investors. Anyone that's local, he shifts over to me, you know, and then we have a showing assistant who, if I am then too busy, he will do our showings for us. You know, I try not to go on showings if I don't have to, because it takes away the time that I am putting in to helping my clients, because it is a numbers game in this investor market. You know, if we don't make that offer right away and I'm wasting my time showing a house, it could go under contract.
Exactly.
So, but like I was saying, you know, Mike has the first conversation, and then he finds the house. He pretty much I write the offer, and then everything else falls into my lap.
Yeah.
So
you guys sort of have, aside from the fact that you guys are married, you guys have sort of a team structure or a team feel to it where, so not to put a label on it, but it sounds like Mike would be a team lead in the sense that that's where kind of everything filters and funnels into, and then you decide maybe between the two of you where that's going to land.
Yeah.
So he pretty much uses me for agent to agent relationships.
I'm a super high D, super high I on the disc profile. So like, let's just go, right? Like that's my whole thing. And, a lot of agents, I can't communicate to a lot of the agents out there. So that's where she's done a huge help. And then also too, I tend to run into a lot of the same agents because of the business that I've built. There's a handful of us that do a ton of investment properties in this market. So I tend to run into a lot of the same agents. So I have good relationships with many of them. So, and then, that's where she comes into, or maybe I can't get a hold of somebody, or maybe I'm knee deep in a project and I'm meeting with contractors and I need her to get a hold of an agent for me. She does a really good job at getting a hold of them, staying after them, getting them on the phone, like, hey, finding out what do we need to do to get the deal done. Right. Cause that's oftentimes, Mark, and Will, I'm sure you've done it a million times too. Like that communication is key. I can't tell you how many times over the last 2 years in this hyper crazy in an environment that we've gotten a listing where we've gotten offers from people we had no idea even showed the house because they didn't even pick up your phone. They didn't pick up your phone to call you.
They'll just email it over and send it in dot loop.
Yep.
Not to make this about me, I missed an offer once, found it after I presented the 12. It was a better offer. I ended up telling the seller about it because I didn't want them to find out later. I gave my whole commission back, all because that agent, $4,000, all because that agent sent an offer over, didn't call me, and I didn't know it was there and didn't see it until later on in the day.
Right.
And in order to keep myself honest, I paid them the difference and gave up the entire commission, thanks to her not making a phone call.
Right. Yeah. So that's where, we always, the communication is the key. It's just, I've become friends with agents because you actually get them on the phone and you have a 20-30 minute conversation with them. Mark, that's, I think how you and I started.
Actually, I was going to say, I can personally speak to the high D, high I. That's how I am as well. But I think on the last one, Diana had to reach hey, Mark, where's that? I can't remember what it was. So, but anyway, So
I think it was an ROC or
who knows? Anyway, but it's just, I don't know. Here's the thing, right? This is we're not curing cancer. Like this isn't, we're not rocket scientists here. We're relationship managers. We're doing all these things, and it's I don't want to say it's not hard because it is. It's really hard to do what we do at a high level. But if you just put in the time and energy and and put in the work, so to speak, it kind of that thing will end up moving itself, I think. And you think of it like the locomotive, right? Like it starts off very, very slow and it has to build up the pressure. And and for us, like I said, we've gotten to a point in our business where I never dreamt of, 5 years ago, I got my license. No, I want to just sell. I did the math, right? Like my very first team leader, I sat down and did the math. He's like, "What do you want to make?" I'm like, "I don't know, 100,000." Okay. Well, based on today's numbers, you got to sell this many houses. It was like 24. I'm like, okay, cool. 2 houses a month. That's pretty easy, right? That's what I was thinking back then.
Right.
And then, by year 3, I exceeded that. And I was like, holy, wow. What if we actually, what if we built something? So that's kind of where we're at. We're at this weird, her and I are at this weird crossroads too. Like we don't know what the future holds because we've never been through a down market. I feel good though, in the position that we've put ourselves in, especially with the heavy investor side of the business. And then also I think too, for us, we want to build out our own portfolio as well, which I think this market will help us do that because I'm also out there competing with buyers, in this market too. So hopefully more deals will come across our desk, and so for us, like I said, we're still figuring it out, honestly. We definitely want to build from where we are because we're still at a point where we take this on vacation with us, right? Like it's that we do have a full-time admin now. We hired a cyberbacker who has helped us quite a bit with our transaction coordinating side of the stuff.
A cyber what?
Cyberbacker.
What is that?
It's a company. Yeah. It was started by some Keller Williams folks, and they outsource virtual assistants from the Philippines. And they have different levels of what you can hire. So we hired what was a full-time administrative assistant. So she works exclusively for us 40 hours a week. She works 9 to 5 Eastern, even though it's the hours are completely flipped where she lives. But she's readily available. Now, I think pushing forward through 2022 and into 2023, what we need to do is start actually putting a little bit more onto her plate, because the job description that they gave us that they'll do is far exceeds what the daily tasks that we have her doing right now. And I think part of that has to do with my inability to want to let things go. I mean, Mark, you know how that is. Yep. You don't want to let anything out of your cold dead hands, right? So,
you end up becoming a seagull manager. You just swoop in and leave.
Yeah. So so for me, I've had to kind of do that. But like I said, I think that's where that can help us grow. As if the more I can get, the more I can leverage off, helps me go do more deals. So
sounds great.
It's one of those, one other thing I'll share too is, I had an agent one of those guys in my office that kind of, mentored me a little bit without me being part of their team. I was in the office one day complaining to his counterpart about a deal that fell apart. Right. And for 15 minutes, I'm just yammering my gums, and he calls me into his office, and he was kind of a quiet guy, but they did a ton of business. He's like, "Hey, come here." I'm like, "Okay." Shut the door. So he pulls me into his office. He goes, "I've been listening to you yammer on for 15 minutes about that deal that fell apart." I go, "Yeah." He goes, You don't have enough deals." And I was like, "Huh?" And he goes, "Look, 2 out of every 10 deals you have is going to fall apart for whatever reason. Okay. The ROC, the buyer's going to go buy a car, the seller's going to die. There's going to be a million reasons why that deal falls apart." He goes, and you just wasted 15 minutes of your day yammering over here to him about your deal that fell apart. He goes, "You shouldn't have counted the money in your bank account before you had it." He goes, "You don't have enough deals." And I was like 2 years in the business at that point. That just blew my mind. And I still tell that story obviously I'm telling you guys this story to that day. So to me, in my mind, I've always had him in the back of my mind going, "You don't have enough deals. You don't have enough deals. You don't have enough deals." Until it became a point where okay, cool. Now I think, at the peak last year, we were probably carrying, 15 to 20 open escrows at any one point in time. At that point, it's like, wow, holy cow. Okay. Maybe he was right, so that when 1 or 2 does fall apart, it's not the end of the world, right? It's not like we're not going to eat tonight. It's not like we're not going to go, on date night. You know what I mean? It's not like our business is going to suffer because that one deal may have fell apart. So,
and it wasn't even the 15 minutes. It's the 4 hours of bruising after that 15 minutes, trying to get your head back in the game to do something positive.
Yep. And that's, that's just one of those things you got to learn in this business. Is kind of you just got to, it is tough. It's super, you get those highs and lows, and you try to flatten them out a little bit. And, it's tough for guys like me, because I'm just, super high strung, but, it's something that's just always stuck in my mind. And I love sharing the story because he was super right. He was super right.
Oh, yeah. You flatten those highs and lows out by having more conversations. When people say our business is tough, we're in an air conditioned or heated room making phone calls. It's not, right. We're not chopping down trees in the woods.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're not, like all those great people that are down there rebuilding Southwest Florida, right?
Right.
All those electricians and all those utility workers and all those construction folks that, they put the Sanibel Causeway back together in 3 weeks, for as an emergency road for people to get back to the island. That's unbelievable.
Oh, no kidding. That's back together?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have a house down there.
What? In Sanibel?
We have a house in Cape Coral.
Wow.
Yeah, but we were very, very fortunate. Our home was built in 2019. We sustained, very minor damage. So a lot of people have a lot worse than us. So we're, we thank, we're thankful every day for the very little bit of damage that we sustained. So
Fort Myers got hammered.
Yeah. I mean, people died, right? I mean, people lost their lives, people lost everything. So we're super thankful. I actually just got back from Florida. I drove down there because we didn't know what we were going into down at the house. We didn't know if water had we didn't know if water got into the house. We didn't know. So I drove my truck down. I took a bunch of tools. We knew a little bit of the exterior damage that we had sustained from a friend who got some pictures. And I took some supplies down to donate to the Keller Williams office down there. I put as much stuff in my truck as I could and just took off.
Water, first aid.
Yeah, we were 50 cases of water, first aid kits, like just anything I could stuff in my truck, and took off for a week, and still did business while I was down there. It was hard. There was no internet. I waited until we had power back. So once I confirmed I had power back at the house, then I was like, okay, cool. I'll have air conditioning. I'll have running water, things like that. I had no internet. Luckily, my cell phone service was pretty good down there. So I was able to tether to my phone and stuff like that and still do, business. But it was tough, driving through some of those areas that were the hardest hit. I mean, to me, it was like what is going on in Ukraine with the war, or, some of these, looked like some of these areas look like a third world country.
Imagine being a real estate agent down there right now.
Trust me, it's been running in my head because I finished my classes months ago,
right.
And I need to take my test, and I'm like, how am I going to sell houses in Fort Myers and Cape Coral?
Right.
Do I just put that on hold? Do I test and pick a different area? I mean, what do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. So like I said, we're very fortunate, but
I had a question personally that was going to be teed up, but we actually, you guys talked about it earlier. Since you guys are both in kind of two different worlds in the business, and you guys are in a unique position that you've had a super successful start to your business, and admittedly haven't experienced a shift like what we're in, whatever that's going to look like. What are you guys? What's the message that you guys are sending to either your sphere or prospective clients or clients that you're currently working with? And I'm interested to hear kind of both the traditional consumer message, and if that's a different message than Mike, maybe you're sending.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this, at least to me, and everything all the research that I'm doing and the circles that I'm involved with on the investment side of the business, this is not 2009 all over again. And the statistics bear it out, right? There's still no inventory.
Right.
There is still a supply issue in this country for any housing, let alone affordable housing, right? There's a supply issue, and there has been a supply issue for the better part of a decade, 12 years, right? As the new home starts went crashing to a halt back in 2010, as all those home builders went out of business. I wasn't in the business back then, but I watched it a little bit. So my message to people is I'm seeing less competition for the investors. A property that 6 months ago would have had 15 offers, maybe only today it's got 2 offers or 3 offers, right? And maybe maybe it lasts a week on the market, right? So I'm just telling investors, hey, look, I know the interest rates are almost unbearable. You have to realize that the 2%, 3% interest rate environment that we were in for those 18 months, that's never coming back. Right. And if you think it is,
the next pandemic.
I got some swampland down in Florida, I'll tell you. You know what I mean? Like that was an anomaly of anomalies, right? We've never lived through a pandemic in this country, at least our generation. No. With going back to the Spanish flu, 1918, so
I think 1957 there was a pandemic.
Okay. Yep. My dad wasn't even born yet. My dad was born in 1958. You know what I mean? So we've got generations of people who've never seen those types of interest rates, and we're just never going to see them again. I mean, and if we do, that's what kind of economy are we in that we have to have a 2 to 3% interest rate again?
There's no point looking and Googling it, because this morning I looked and it went from 5.5 to 10.5.
Right.
So there's just no way to know. So you just have to get up and work.
Yeah. So the message I'm telling people is, hey, buy the asset, right? Especially in a high inflationary environment, you have something that people want. You know, I had a deal recently that I represented the buyer on that they walked away from the deal post inspection. And then of course, 2 days later, they called me like, hey, we think we made a mistake. We want to go back after that property after the release was signed. I'm like, it's already gone. It was already back under contract with someone else. So I told him, and he wanted me to ask for a $25,000 concession. It's like, that's still not going to happen, right? Like they have the asset that you want, because there aren't 15 more for you to go buy,
right? So and there's 15 more of them looking to buy.
Exactly, especially in our market, right? Especially all this money coming in from the coasts that these guys realized hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars in appreciation in their home markets. They've got all this liquid cash available, and the next guy's just going to swoop in and take it. So I'm telling people, like, hey, don't slow down. I'm not. I wrote 3 offers for us this week on properties that we're trying to buy. So that's my message. Like, hey, just keep buying, because when those interest rates come back down, what's going to happen? Naturally, the people who sat on the fence are going to go back into the market, and the demand is just going to go straight back up. Now, in 2023, are we going to have in our market a plateau? Probably. Will we even see a retraction in some parts of our market? Yeah, I think so. I do. Maybe 5%, maybe 10%. For the buy and hold investor that I work with, it doesn't matter what that property is worth on paper. If it cash flows and it's in good condition, and you got tenants that are paying their rent, and you're getting debt pay down and all the tax advantages that go along with it, it doesn't really matter.
And to add on to that, Mike, let's say that we have a retraction. One of the things that's not going to retract is rent. Right. I mean, rents are rents, and to get those to come down is going to be almost impossible. So for the buy and hold investor, it's an absolute amazing market.
Yeah. I mean, people are always going to need somewhere to live, and our rents had a long way to go to get up, right? And so will our rents flatten off a little bit? I think over the next 18 months, I think we're going to see a flattening of rent here, because it raised so fast. I mean, there's houses that I've gotten, the investors have bought, and then I a couple of weeks later, I call the property manager. I'm like, hey, what'd you get in rent for that? So I know, and they're like $1,300, and I'm like, what? Wow, that house didn't rent for $900 2 years ago. Yeah, that's where, so I think there will be a little bit of a flattening in the rents as well. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a physical asset that someone else is going to want, and someone else is going to need eventually. So I don't think you can lose. So
and the underlying economy is still strong. So it's not like the last housing crash where the housing market dragged down the economy. That's not going to happen this time.
Yeah. And that's, by and large too, right? And the entire banking system was restructured after 2009. The stated income loans, those things, they went away. People have more equity in their homes than they ever had before. Back in 2009, like for me, example, I bought my very first home in 2003. I paid $80,000 or so for it in 2003. In 2005, I refinanced it out to like $100,000 because I needed some money to pay some bills. And then in 2009, I woke up and it was worth $35,000.
No, my.
What? I still own that house to this day, by the way. I still own that house.
And I bet you're getting rent for it.
I have a tenant in there, and she's been in there for 8 years, and I will probably have to bury her in the backyard. She's never moving out of that house. And now that house has gone back up in value, right? If I needed to sell that house today, I could go in, I could kick her out, I could refurb the house for probably less than $10,000 and get it to market, and I'd sell it for 110, 120, and now I only owe, gosh, at this point, I think I owe about 40 grand on it, and she's been paying the bill the whole time, and we don't even pull any cash flow off of that particular property. I've been taking her rent every single month and just putting it
house down.
Yeah. Cause the mortgage on that house is only like $480 anyway. It's one of those situations where I just, that one's our set it and forget it. I mean, cause like I said, she's never moving out of that house.
What about you, Diana? What are you telling your traditional retail buyers and sellers?
Obviously everybody is super cautious. I have been telling them with how the interest rates are, everybody wants a unicorn. They want to take their time. They want things that just aren't realistic. So I just tell them, like, if you are so afraid that the interest rates are so high, you need to be picky about what you are out there looking at. Like, do you want to just buy something because you're afraid the interest rates are going to keep going up? That's a terrible idea, because then you're going to hate the house, and then we're back in the situation again. So, it's one of those, it's the battle that we've always gone through, even at 2%, 3%. It's, well, I don't want to get into a bidding war. Now the interest rates are too high. I just have to remind them, the longer we wait, the scenario shifts. Like, you're going to be in a bidding war, or your interest rates are going to go up. There's never going to be a right time to buy. You just have to really focus on the things that matter the most to you, that you want out of buying. And it's, I'm going to piggyback on Mike a little bit. I have a buyer now who, we just closed on a house that they're going to burr, and now they want, rather than selling the house they live in, they're going to start house hacking. And I've actually got that from a few of my residential people who want to buy stuff, but aren't, the perfect thing isn't out there yet, but they need to make a move. You know what I mean? Like,
I think to your point, the challenge is specifically on the traditional side of things. Investors, I think, look at it more black and white Excel data, as opposed to emotional. And the traditional buyer, or seller, but specifically what you're saying, even though they might not be saying it out loud, they're trying to, their goal is to time the market, and they can't.
Right.
And so if tomorrow we got news that rates were going to go back to 3.5%, the people that are on the fence because of the 7.5% are now going to be in a bidding war. So yeah, I think it's great advice to say, look, if this is an emotional decision that's being driven by a need or a want in terms of life change or whatever that looks like, have your goals to be set on what the product is. Like, what do you need? And then you can, deal with interest rate and, cost and all that stuff later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. The quote I did not come up with it. I stole it from someone else, right? It's marry the house, date the rate, right? I mean, rates are not forever. So.
And the last thing I'll say on that, because we've been telling our clients, you get a house for 280 and you pay 310, 320 when the rates were at 3, because you had 15 offers. That $30,000 or $40,000 was a premium you paid just to be the winner. Now you might get the house for $10,000 less than the list price, or some kind of a concession. You get to have your inspections done, so you know exactly what you're getting. And the interest rate, the delta in payment might be $600 a month. But how many months is that going to be before it burns through the $30,000 premium that you paid before? Rates will probably drop down into the 5s, and then you can refinance, and you'll still be ahead of the game versus paying that non-refundable premium to win a deal when there's 15 offers.
Yep. That's a great point, Will. That's a really, really good point. So
yeah.
I didn't even think of that. I'm going to steal that, I think. So.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, I'm very intelligent and I have lots of good points. Anyway, awesome. Guys, thanks for coming on. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm really excited for people to listen to this episode, because you guys have done so well. You're young. You've done what any other successful person is. You're more concerned about losing your house than you are about what someone's going to say to you on the phone. Right. So you just prospected and you ground it out. And that's the magic. And you do it consistently, and you found your niche. Riches are in the niches, and I'm really happy for both of you.
Wow, awesome.
So thanks for being on this podcast with us.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to have you here. Well, thanks for taking the time to be on here, guys. And
thank you.
Thanks for everyone for listening. We'll continue having excellent realtors like Mike and Diana on this show, and keep listening. You guys have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Mark. See you guys. Bye.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Building Stronger Agents podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star review and share our podcast with your friends.